You're going to do the time thing, right? Because I haven't had a chance to practice this, so I'll be counting on seeing the yellow and the red especially. Okay. So this is officially titled the self-introduction speech, if I'm not mistaken. Is that what you guys call it?
You can title it whatever you like.
Okay. What you're about to hear is an actual true story. I came to New York City with no friends, no family, no job, and no place to stay years ago. I came from Toledo, Ohio. And now I was part of the internet revolution within the fashion industry, and I enjoy global travels on the house. I've stayed at some of the fanciest hotels the world has to offer, from Moscow and Mexico to Los Angeles, and my photography has taken me around the world. But it all started back in Toledo, Ohio, with me being at the tail end of a bad relationship. I was with this girl, and the relationship was going downhill. And instead of going back home to live with my girlfriend, I went to Barnes & Noble and picked up travel guides to New York City. And I would study these travel guides, and I'd look at the buildings in Soho, the cast iron buildings. I would look at the photos of the yellow cabs, and I'd be like, this is where I want to be. This is my childhood dream. Even as I speak to you right now, I go back to my youth when I was a little kid. And I'd be like, Mom, let's go on vacation in New York City. And Mom would be like, no, we can't go. But I can still see the Berlitz travel guide and the Manhattan skyline inside my hands right now. Finally, one day, I had 2 boxes of clothes. They were like this big, and it wasn't fancy clothes. It was just like Izod's. It was stuff that you would expect from someone in the Midwest to wear. And I had my friend take me down to the Greyhound bus station. So I had 2 boxes of clothes and $2,000 saved up. I was completely naive. I was this Midwestern kid coming to the big city, and whoa, did I have some lessons that I was going to learn. So overnight, it was like, I think it was like a 10 o'clock bus ride, and I arrived in New York at like 6 a.m. or something like that. I sat front seat next to the driver, and I'm like, hey, what do you know about New York? I couldn't even sleep that night. I was so excited because I was like, what's going to happen in New York? And of course, this guy tells me all the stories about, well, you know, Penn Station, they have all these scams, and I'm like, scams? What's that? I was this innocent Midwestern kid thinking, boy, I'm going to make it in New York. So anyway, I get to New York City. It's like 6 a.m. And I fortunately had an appointment scheduled in Greenwich Village for a room to rent, because that's all I could count on. It was something I think I got off of a service I paid like $350 for, which totally wasn't worth it. Anyway, I check my stuff into the locker at Penn Station, and then I go down to the Village, and I call the guy to let him know that I'm there from a public phone. And he goes, okay, cool. Come around the side of the building and I'll drop the keys down to you from the side. And I'm like, oh, great. So I'm standing here, it was 6th Avenue and like West 4th Street. And the guy sticks his head out the window and drops the keys down, and I let myself up and go up 3 flights. And I'm like, oh, this is great, no one else is in here. Then the phone starts to ring, and I'm like, oh, great. And he picks it up and he starts talking, well, yeah, the room's still available. And I'm like, oh man, what did I get myself into? Midwestern kid in big city, New York. Phone rings again. I'm like, oh my God, what did I really get myself into? Someone knocks on the door, and some other guy's coming in at the same time to look at the room to rent that I thought, being this Midwest naive kid, I was going to get for sure. Fortunately, I did get the room. But things got worse from there, because the guy only rented it out to me, and he didn't tell me this until the last minute, for 21 days. And then I was forced to move out. So then I moved up to another room to rent on West 51st Street, which was a railroad apartment. Not much better, considering the lady had a rent-controlled apartment. And the worst part of it was sound travels through the railroad apartments really easily. So she was an older woman. She was like in her 70s or something like that, and she had this vintage, thank you, she had this vintage ice grinder. It was like yay big, made out of steel, and she would make these slushies at like 4 in the morning. She'd go like that. I could never get a good night's rest. And I'm like, you know what, it was like October, or no, rather it was like November, I don't remember exactly. And I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna move out. You can keep the deposit. You have 30 days to find someone else to live here. No problem, right? It's New York City. Piece of cake. She's like, actually, no. No such thing will happen. You're not going to stay for 30 more days. You'll have all your stuff picked up by tomorrow morning, or I'll have it on the curb for you. I was getting the boot, and I was about ready to be homeless. All the Midwestern kids' dreams were like were immediately like dissolving. Fortunately, I'm semi-good at networking, and I started to go through my quote-unquote Rolodex of phone numbers of people that I had met and taken down. And there was this guy in Queens that I called up. His name was Manfred. He was this Filipino guy. Really, really nice guy. I called him up and I'm almost crying. It's like the holiday season. I'm like, Manfred, here's the situation. I'm getting kicked out of my apartment. I really don't know what to do. Can you help me? Manfred's like, call me back in half an hour. I might actually have a place for you to stay. Cool. I was like, oh my God, there's hope. So, I called Manfred back in half an hour. He's like, Craig, I'm sorry. The guy that has a 2-bedroom apartment in Jersey City, he isn't ready for a roommate just yet. So you call me back in 2 hours and I'll see if there's some other people that I can call. All right, 2 hours, virtually homeless, is like an eternity when you're all by yourself in New York City. So I call him back in 2 hours, but in the meantime, Manfred in Queens, he goes downstairs and he's on the edge of the stairs. He's not fully downstairs, he's like just halfway down, and his kid, Junior, is sitting there watching TV, and he's like, Junior, there's this really nice guy I met, and he's getting kicked out of his apartment, and he has nowhere to go. I don't know what to do. And he's like, Pa, it's the holidays. You can't leave him out on the streets by himself. And he's like, you know what, Junior? You're right. So when I called up Manfred 2 hours later, Manfred's like, Craig, come on over, you have a place to stay. So the next day I came over with my 2 boxes, and my life changed from there on out. It was a struggle for the first 13 months. It was a dilemma, I guess you could say, because I had no money. I had to constantly, I couldn't even go to Starbucks. I was counting my pennies. But the moral of the story is that I stuck it out. I started to blog and, oh, time's up?
Yeah, well, you keep going.
Can I keep going?
Yeah, finish your.
Oh, okay. So, you know, I would walk around and I'd be like, what do I do with myself? What do I do with myself? And so I picked up a point-and-click camera and started taking photos of people on the street back in 2006, thinking, this would be cool if I put this on the internet. It's valuable, it tells people how to dress and look good. 2007, I actually started putting it on the internet. 2009, I started exploding. I had 6 solo interviews with Vogue. Vogue Paris, Vogue Italia, Vogue China, and from there on out, my life changed. The moral of the story is you're always going to be faced with a life dilemma. You can chase your dreams, or you can give up. And if I can make it, especially with no friends, no family, and nowhere to stay, coming to New York with this like naivety that I had from being from the Midwest, you can make it as well in your dreams. So just, you have a choice, never give up.
Shake hands.
Okay.
Congratulations on the first speech.
Thank
We
you.
also have a little something to present to you, which we give to all people
Oh, cool.
doing a speech for the first time, which is some icebreaker.
Oh, fantastic. That's funny. Thank you.
Yay!
And yeah, what a wonderful